Hey everyone, I decided to make this improvised video because I cannot stop playing Phoenix Point. I didn't write a script for this because I don't really have any grand thesis or arguments. I just kind of wanted to talk about how the game is like and why I like it. Because I spent a lot of time, I spent an unhealthy amount of time recently playing this game. I really cannot stop playing it. So Phoenix Point is a game made by Julian Gollop, was the creator of the original old XCOM games, which are turn-based strategy games where you defend Earth from an alien invasion. And you build bases, you shoot down UFOs, you take your squads on missions and kill a bunch of ALMAOs. There were modern reboots, XCOM Enemy Unknown, XCOM 2, Chimera Squad, and I love these games. They are fantastic. I cannot recommend them enough. But there are some elements from the old games that I wish made the jump. I haven't played them, but I've played Xenonauts, or Xenonauts. And Phoenix Point really feels like the perfect blend between these two worlds. So the first big difference is that in Phoenix Point, all of your shots are simulated. In modern XCOM, when you take a shot, you either hit or you miss, and you see the percentages, and you take the shot and you hit or you miss with this shot, and deal some random amount of damage. But in Phoenix Point, every individual shot is simulated. And what that means is that your gun almost acts like in some first-person shooter like Counter-Strike or what have you, where you're aiming in some general direction and then there is some random bullet spread away from this sort of ideal direction, and each shot has some random deviation, and each individual shot either hits or doesn't hit. This was a little bit the case in the modern XCOMs, where like your shot can destroy cover or blow something up, but it's not like by missing an enemy you're gonna hit another enemy, or you might end up shooting your teammate or something. But all of this can happen in Phoenix Point. Take the basic assault rifle, for example, the default one. One action of shooting entails 6 bullets. You fire 6 times every time you take a shot action. And each of these bullets has its own sort of random spread. However, all of the shots are guaranteed to land within this outer circle. So you take 6 shots, and 50% of all the shots you take from this assault rifle are guaranteed to land within the inner circle, and all of them are guaranteed to land within the outer circle. And each of them can hit or miss, or it can hit a teammate, it can hit some object or whatever. And I really like that. That feels very authentic. You can even take a shot without even seeing any enemy, because let's say that an enemy is hiding in cover, but they're at an angle where the soldier cannot directly see them. You can still take the shot and hope that the shot destroys the cover, and then either further shots damage this enemy, or now you've got an easier time hitting the enemy with other soldiers. I really like that. That's really authentic. The only thing that I kind of don't like is how hard it seems for your soldiers to aim downwards. Having the high ground really isn't very good in this game, because it's shocking how little some of your soldiers sometimes can sort of see over the edge, especially if there's like a barrier. So that's a little annoying. You can also target individual body parts. Each enemy is made up of different body parts. Well, duh. Kind of, I think Fallout has a similar system where each body part has its own health, and then once you disable that body part by dealing enough damage, some modifiers will be applied. And that also feels very authentic. I really like that. When I started playing, I always tried to aim for the head because, you know, headshots should deal more damage, and they usually do. Like, the head is usually has the weakest armor of all the body parts. But what I have learned since then is that sometimes it's, especially when fighting human enemies, it's actually really good to aim for the arms. And the reason for that is because most weapons are wielded with two hands, and when you disable one of the hands, then most of the time the enemy will just fucking run away because they can't do anything now. They can't fire their weapons because most of them require two arms. And that's actually a mechanic in the game. Some weapons require two arms, and some of them, like pistols, require just one. And that is really cool. You can also shoot legs to reduce their movement. You can even shoot the weapons themselves to destroy them. I really like that. This feels very authentic. Many of the enemies, they have... Some of them have guns, some of them are melee only, some of them can go invisible. There's a lot of different status effects they can inflict. They have many different abilities. What I kind of don't... I mean, I kind of like it, I kind of don't like it, but the enemies can develop mutations, and I heard that these mutations appear according to what you are doing, as in they sort of develop these mutations to counter the way you fight, but I don't know how true that is. The problem is that there's a lot of them. There's a lot of these like random modifiers that, you know, are the basic enemies you fight in the tutorial. They're called Arthrons, but by the end game you're fighting sort of Arthron Brute Prime Alpha, like, you know what I mean? It gets kind of ridiculous. It gets hard to remember what the different variants mean. You just find an enemy and it's like Triton Wretch Elite Marksman or something like that, and I like, I can see that he's got a sniper rifle in his hands, but I don't remember what all these other modifiers do. So yeah, there's just a lot of them. It's hard to remember how they work. Something else I really like is that in the modern XCOMs you have one base and one squad aircraft, and you cannot get any more. It's pretty sort of gamey. It doesn't really feel like a it doesn't feel like a simulation of sort of what's happening in the world. That's something I really like about Xenonauts. I think that's kind of the best part, is how you can open many bases. You can have different aircraft, you can have different squads, you can have different people in transit between them, and like, they feel quite physical. Even the storage of the individual bases is specific to those bases, right? As in, when you build a laser gun in one base, it's only going to be at that base, it's not going to be anywhere else. And I really like that. And I am pleased to say that in Phoenix Point, some of this is carried over. As in, you can have multiple bases, you can have multiple aircraft, they can fly around in different places, they can be in transit, they can carry different people. However, the storage of your items is sort of stored in this pocket dimension, which can be accessed from anywhere, which is a little annoying. I couldn't find a sort of unequip other soldiers key, so really you only need enough gear in this game to equip one squad, because once you have that, then when a different squad reaches a mission, or has to do a mission, you can just take the gear off the other squad, they could be on the other side of the earth. You can just take off their gear and put them on the ones that are currently about to do something. And that's a bit annoying, that there isn't like one key to just unequip everyone else, because that is quite time consuming. It is a little tedious, and also it feels like I'm being wasteful by producing equipment for all of my soldiers, because I don't have to do that. I can just spend like hours of my life just unequipping and re-equipping soldiers to save on resources, but that feels kind of boring and cheap. The enemies are cool, they are quite varied, they have different abilities, and so do your soldiers. The problems I had with Xenonauts is that it was getting kind of samey. Like, you could get better gear, but it's all like fundamentally shooty bang bang, you know? It doesn't have any really new abilities. Your soldiers don't even get new abilities, like they literally just have their stats pumped up as they gain experience, as they level up, they get better. And it feels good to have these sort of super soldiers, but they're not fundamentally different than your rookies. And Xenonauts was getting really tedious. I have not beaten Xenonauts because it got so fucking tedious that I couldn't bear playing any further. I was just shooting down UFOs all the time. It was the same missions over and over again. And it felt like I was making little progress and not much was changing. The enemies felt quite similar to each other, and so did my soldiers. But the ups and the modern XCOMs kind of fix this. Like, there's different abilities. Each of the enemies, they've done a really good job, in my opinion, at making them feel unique. At least in Enemy Unknown. In XCOM 2, there's some, like, they're a bit more boring, but they work. And there's some really cool abilities. They feel very unique. And so do your soldiers. And Phoenix Point feels like it combines both. As in, it has that deeper, more simulation-y strategy layer, while also having a really engaging tactical layer that feels like it just takes the best of both worlds. That's how I feel about it. Another thing I really like about this game is the diplomacy feels a lot more fleshed out than in XCOM 2, for example. So in XCOM 2 there were 3 resistance factions, and the way the diplomacy worked is that you would do the Hunt the Chosen covert actions for each of these factions, and then they would like you more, you would get more resistance orders, you would get more covert action opportunities with them, and stuff like that. And it just felt really basic because, yeah, you had 3 factions, but it's not like you had to pick one over another. You could just keep doing missions for all of them, and you were kind of expected to do that, to be honest. I'm talking about War of the Chosen. Well, in Phoenix Point there's also 3 factions, and their populations are scattered across several havens around the world. There's many different havens. They live in these havens, and each haven belongs to one of 3 factions. There's a few rare sort of independent havens as well, and the 3 factions there: New Jericho, Synedrion, and Disciples of Anu. And it feels a lot more fleshed out because each of these factions has a relations value which is either positive or negative. And each of these factions also has a relations value relative to the other factions. So each of these factions likes you to different degrees, and also they like each other to different degrees. And I watched some guides and stuff, and they often say that it's not very hard to get all of them to like you. I haven't managed to do that yet. I mean, I have managed to get them all on my positive side, but I still haven't managed to max out relations with all of them. I haven't managed to do that yet. And that's because you will sometimes have to pick. There will be events that will sort of force you to pick one of these factions, and then like the best case scenario is that you make the choice, and then the faction just likes you more, this one faction, and the other ones doesn't change. It has no effect on the other factions. But sometimes it will make one faction like you more, but the other one like you less. Or maybe it will make them like you more, but make them like another faction less, you know? So it really feels like you have to sort of pick. And what the actions you make in general have an effect on this as well. The research you perform, the missions you complete has an effect on the relations between you and the factions, but also between the factions themselves. What I found on my first playthrough is that near the end, the three factions just disliked each other so much that they just were in all-out war amongst each other. And you lose the game if the population of the world drops below a certain threshold. So that's kind of your doom counter, your doom clock. And so you can stop this from going down by, for example, saving havens from attack. And that was kind of the problem. When these three factions are at war with each other, they're constantly launching attacks on each other's havens. And I should ideally fly around and defend these havens from attack, because I have to protect people from dying. So you had this sort of annoying situation where I would go fly and, for example, I would defend a Synedrian haven from New Jericho attack, and then moments later I would have to defend a New Jericho haven from Synedrian attack, and I would just have to sort of, it felt like I was a teacher with a class of 5-year-olds, and I would just have to, and it was my job to make them sort of stop fighting. That's kind of how it felt. I didn't manage to end the war. I just beat the game before they finished each other off. So yeah, this is very... And that's not the only thing you can do. You can raid the havens yourselves. You can steal things from them. You can steal their research. You can steal their aircraft. And if you have good relations with the havens, you can trade with them. You can trade the resources with them. You can trade... you can recruit soldiers from them. It's quite deep. It's quite satisfying. Now, there are some shortcomings, okay? This game is not perfect. It clearly does not have quite the budget of modern XCOM. In some ways it's rough around the edges. First of all, the music. I felt like that was one of the most aggressively boring aspects of this game. The music just feels boring. I really like the music in the modern XCOMs, and I don't know why, but when the music in Phoenix Point, it just never made me feel excited. It never made me feel anything, really. So pretty quickly I muted the in-game music and just started playing music from modern XCOM, and it works really well. Another thing is that the maps, I'm not sure if they're randomly generated. I believe they are, because I don't think I've seen an identical repeat yet of the missions. However, I am starting to notice patterns. I am starting to see sort of the same buildings repeating. I'm starting to see sort of some of the maps do look really similar, but I have yet to find an exact match, right? There's always something that's just a little bit different. XCOM 2, I felt did way better with having varied and random maps. Many of them really did constantly just feel very different, and I like that. And so in that case it's a bit of a downgrade. What else? I feel like the story is quite boring as well. Like the main story kind of just follows you following some guy from the past's footsteps and collecting clues about the enemies, the invasion, the Pandora virus. And it just feels like you go somewhere, you do a mission, you get a little bit of exposition, and then the exposition stops, you have to go do the next mission, and then when you do that you're gonna get more exposition, and so on and so forth. In modern XCOM, like, the story wasn't great, but I felt like the objectives were more compelling, and it felt like they sort of fed into one another in more interesting ways. Just felt a little more compelling. It always felt like, oh, what am I gonna find next? What weird thing am I gonna discover next? What's gonna happen? It always felt like there was some more to discover. And in Phoenix Point, I mean, I wanted to learn more about the world, and I did. The missions did provide that, but it just felt like, oh, here's like a few sentences, and then stop, and then you have to go do another mission, and then now you get a few more sentences. You know what I mean? It feels kind of arbitrary and not really like a storyline. It just feels like you're discovering bits, more and more bits of some story that happened before. When playing this game, I felt the same kind of addiction. I don't know how else to put it, but this sort of feeling where I just don't want to stop playing. I want to keep making progress. I want to keep discovering new things. I want to keep getting better. That very little games manage to hook me to this degree. And the modern XCOMs were some of those games. They were some of the most addictive and satisfying games I have ever played. And I am now feeling the same with Phoenix Point as I'm playing it. It took me a long time to get to it because I heard like, oh, in some ways it's cool, in some ways it's bad, but I am absolutely loving it. I heard it described as, I heard the endgame described as, I think, Gollop no, what was it? Gollop Tedium, I think, something like that, where it kind of feels like my impression is that some people think that the games this guy makes, they get really tedious by near the end, and I really did not feel that. I really do not feel like they were getting tedious. I felt like Xenonauts was getting tedious. That game was getting so fucking monotonous. I just stopped playing. Because I was just doing the same things over and over again, and it felt like these missions, I couldn't just run through them. I had to... I guess I could have just airstriked those crash sites instead of sending my soldiers, but I might need those materials, you know? I did not feel like Phoenix Point was getting tedious. It does kind of feel repetitive, but like in a good way. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It felt a little repetitive, but it did not feel tedious. It does not feel boring to me. I'm not sure why. Maybe because the missions just aren't very long, usually. They usually last shorter than I expect them to. And then you're back to the geoscape, you're back to sort of managing your base, you're back to managing your resources. And then, oh, and a haven is under attack. Okay, well, I gotta go and defend them, and now you're in the mission again. And yeah, another thing I would change is that it feels kind of weird how you activate bases. The way you get more bases is that you remotely activate them, and you just, and then they just become active. Like, no person even has to go there. And that felt kind of weird to me. I feel like you should have the ability to sort of build your own bases. That feels a bit more satisfying, because when you choose to activate a base, you pay a fee, and then, oh, suddenly the base is active. And it just feels like, holy shit, like it should be a big deal that I've got a new base, but it just feels like nothing's changed, you know? At least immediately. You have to activate new bases, but once you do, you can activate them instantly. But nothing really changes, and I feel like there should be a bit more sort of fanfare. And I feel like if you had to build your own base, like in Xenonauts, spend some time before even sort of the core of the base is built, and then spend even more time building up the facilities in that base, I feel like that would be better. But that's just a minor nitpick. Another thing I like is that apparently there's multiple endings, in the sense that I believe each of the factions has an ending and a way of winning specific to them. I like that. That makes it feel very replayable. It makes me want to play again and want to side with a different faction this time. And it just makes the play experience feel more dynamic. It means that if you just cannot complete some objective, if you're struggling to capture some living organisms, for example, then you don't have to do that to beat the game. There's other objectives you can complete. Yeah, what else? I don't know, I think that's everything. Yeah, Phoenix Point, I really like it. I am very captivated by this game, and I will probably keep playing it for a long time. And I recommend it. Though it's probably not gonna be to everyone's liking, so watch some gameplay, read a bit about it. You might enjoy it, you might not. The reviews on Steam are not hugely positive, so some people are probably gonna be unimpressed, but I really like it, and I felt like I had to make this video and say something with how much time I'm spending on it. So thanks for watching.